Well, welcome back to the show. Today on the Spiritual Reality Podcast, we are going to dive into the shooting that occurred over a week ago in Minnesota where an ICE agent shot Renee Good. A lot of times that had happened right before last week's episode, but a lot of times I like to let things sit a little bit. I could get things out quicker and I could get more clicks. But honestly, I would rather take a moment and really make sure that all the facts are coming together. And so we're going to take a deep dive into that. The first thing I want to say right up front is it is always sad when somebody loses their life. And so no matter how the analysis of this goes in this podcast, I just want to say that right up front. Very, very sad to see something like this happening. Nobody should be celebrating that, but we are going to get into the biblical view on this issue and take a look on why this type of thing is happening in our culture. I'm probably just going to make everybody mad today, so hang on tight. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share if you appreciate the content. Let's get to it. All right, what I'd like to do is I'd just like to start with the facts when it comes to this shooting that happened on January 7th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so here's, as best I can, just cold, hard, emotionless, like just here's the facts, okay? One or two of these, there may be some dispute over, some people may feel one way or the other about, but let's just get into this. First of all, we know that Renee Good and her wife intended to interfere with ICE operations on that street that day. We know that. We know that they parked in the middle of the road. We know that. That was kind of the way that they were interfering. We know that Becca Good was out of the car and was filming ICE agents and taunting them. We've all seen those videos. We know that officers approached the car and they demanded that Renee Good get out of the car. And we know for sure that she did not comply. Oddly and interestingly, she just kind of calmly replied back to them. Like, instead of doing what she was told, it was almost like she felt like as long as I'm cool, calm, and collected, I don't have to do what they're telling me to do. So she calmly says back to them, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Which is not really relevant. How you feel about the officer doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not you should obey what they're telling you to do. One officer pulled on the door handle. During this time, Becca Good is outside the car and is filming the officers, and she's saying things like, "Hey, show your face, big boy. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It will be the same plate when you come talk to us later." So indicating we're just following you around today. "You want to come at us," she said. "You want to come at us. I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy." I don't know exactly what that meant, but those were things that I'm just telling you the timeline of what was on the videos that we have access to. At that point, she gets back in the car. Renee Good puts the car in reverse briefly, and then Becca says, "Drive, baby, drive." The car is turning, but still going toward the one officer that is in front of the car. Some angles make it pretty clear he was hit, and now it's even being reported, even by CBS News, that he was treated for internal bleeding from actually being struck by the car. As the car is coming at the officer and hitting him, he fired 3 shots all within about a second. And I looked it up. I don't think I'm mistaken about this. This is how officers are trained to shoot. That just successive bang, 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 bang until the threat is neutralized. After the shooting, it is believed that the voice heard screaming is Becca saying, "Why did you have real bullets?" And then also saying, "I made her come down here. It's my fault." So, strange comment. Why did you have real bullets? I don't know if that was just her expectation that anybody who's out protesting, which this goes beyond a protest, by the way, that they're typically going to be encountered with rubber bullets, or I don't know what she was expecting. From all available evidence, it seems that the first shot entered through the front of the windshield. So just wanted to make sure and say that because I feel like that was important. And the other two evidently through the open side window. I feel like most people would agree with everything I just said, except some people are debating, did she actually hit him? That kind of thing. I feel like at this point, the facts are pretty indisputable that she actually did hit him. So he had reason to fear for his life. It's not a protest. It's gone beyond that. When you're getting hit with a deadly weapon, which is a car is, when you choose to use it that way. So first of all, let's talk about the ways that this is being approached in culture and the flaws that we see in the logic. And we see this in a lot of different things that we encounter. One way that these are always spun is to say, this wasn't worth someone's life. People use that reasoning when someone gets shot in a home robbery. Well, my stuff isn't worth someone's life. Now, there's a couple problems with that reasoning. First of all, you don't always know the extent to which someone is going to violate the law. If you are in my house in the middle of the night, it's not a huge leap of logic to say that you are a very dangerous person who doesn't care about coming face to face with a homeowner and that you're prepared to hurt whoever is in your way. Otherwise, why, you would have at least maybe tried to sneak in during the day while maybe nobody was home or that kind of thing. You're already breaking the law. And I can say, please, sir, help yourself. I'll just file an insurance claim. My stuff is not worth your life. That's lovely until the person decides that leaving witnesses of his theft is not worth his freedom, losing his freedom, and he kills my whole family. That's on me if I allow that to happen. And so when somebody begins to threaten you or put you in a threatening situation, you don't know how far that's going to go. And that's on them for putting you in a threatening situation. And that is the case in this situation. If this is not worth her life, then she should not have put the officer in danger. The officer's life was in danger here while the car was turning. It obviously didn't turn enough not to hit him. And we know for sure that this car coming at him was a threat to him. As an officer, he's allowed, he's trained, and he's encouraged to stop threats against himself and others. And if she's willing to drive through him, who else might get mowed over in the process? And so he's not only protecting himself, he's protecting others. When we say that this wasn't worth taking her life, we have to remember that in a sense, she decided that. He did not decide that. She put him in a position where he had to do what he had to do. In my illustration of someone breaking into my house at night, they have decided to risk their life in order to obtain my stuff. That is a calculation they should have done. My calculation should be, is being able to say that I didn't shoot that person worth risking my family's life? My family's life is not worth your desire for more stuff. Their calculation should be, your stuff is not worth my life. That's how they should be thinking. That's on them to think that way. Renee Good was evidently part of a group called Ice Watch that trains people to resist ICE activities and supposedly trains them to know their rights, though I feel like she went far beyond her rights here. First of all, you don't have a right to interfere with ICE operations. It's a felony to physically interfere with ICE operations. And secondly, you definitely don't have a right to drive a car at an ICE agent. And so if they are trained in how to do this and still be civil, this went beyond that. Another thing I'm hearing that is very bad reasoning is an argument based on her intent. And I'm just going to be honest, it really doesn't matter what her intent was. She was interfering with ICE activities. If she wants to stand on the sidewalk and she wants to protest or blow her whistle or whatever, that's all fine. But when you attempt to stop them from where they are going, then you don't obey orders. And then after you have been told to get out of the car, you attempt to drive away and you hit an officer in the process. You have put yourself in a life-threatening situation, and that is all on you. You can say, I'm not mad at you. That's nice. That's a nice thing to say, but you have still put yourself, if you don't obey, and then you drive into an officer, the officer is not required in that split second to determine how polite you have been up till that point or what your intentions might be. It's just not. And we can't really function as a culture if that's how we're gonna determine things. Well, I wonder what their intent was. One public figure suggested that he should have shot her tires. That's not how law enforcement works. And if that's how they worked, we'd have a lot more dead officers not going home to their families. frankly. That is not how it works. And I'm sorry to tell them that. That's why you don't put yourself in these situations, because you don't get to tell the officer, well, you should have shot my tires. At that close range, shooting a tire, honestly, would not have made much of a difference for him. He still would have been hit, and hit hard. Some have blamed the officer for being in front of the vehicle. Well, you don't stand in front of a vehicle. But keep in mind, at this point, she was being told to exit the vehicle, and it would be reasonable for him to stand in front of the vehicle to keep her from driving away as well. And so that's just probably, I don't know what their training is, but it's probably standard procedure that once somebody has disobeyed those orders and has been difficult like this, we're going to box you in and we're going to get you out of the car. So how should we see this biblically? Well, naturally, we go to Romans chapter 1 first. That's a very common passage that we use in these situations. It says, "Let everyone be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended." Now, keep in mind, people look at this and they say, yeah, but that would only apply if the authority is good and loving and is doing the right thing. You got to keep in mind, this was written to Romans in a time where Christians were starting to be persecuted, where really the power of Rome killed their Savior. It was Pontius Pilate that ordered his execution. So, I mean, this is not a situation where everything is rosy with the government, and Paul is saying, because you got such a great government, you can trust what they're doing, and therefore you should comply with what they're telling you to do. And so these ICE officers are simply obeying the laws that we have on the books. People who have come here illegally, especially if they are here to do harm or commit fraud against the American people, are legally supposed to be deported. What is really interesting is that before Trump, the president who was referred to as the deporter in chief was Barack Obama. He deported more than any other president at that point, and I'm not sure, but I think Trump has still not passed him. And I saw someone had a post that said, all the people that Obama deported, and it said, but yet no one got shot. Well, let me tell you why I think that's a very unfair comparison. There is not anyone calling for people, there was not anyone at that time calling for people to protest his deportations. There were not groups organizing to obstruct ICE from deporting people, which is what put these people in this dangerous situation right here. There was no hysteria calling Obama Hitler for simply enforcing the law in this area. The only difference really between the two presidents on this issue is the personality of the two presidents. Trump has said some things that don't sound so nice because he emphasizes a lot of the bad elements that have come here illegally. Trump realizes, obviously, that there are good people who are just trying to make a living, that kind of thing. But he emphasizes the fact that, we've opened our borders and we don't know what all is here, and we're beginning to see crime as a result. And so that's what he's emphasizing. And it feels like he's saying all immigrants are bad people. And just to be honest with you, as a Christian, I would love for Trump to talk differently. Not me as a Christian. I don't think he's a Christian, by the way. And so it's just interesting that we didn't have all of this hysteria under Obama, just because Obama seemed friendlier about it. Obama just quietly went about his business and just did this. We're still allowing the media to whip us up into a frenzy and divide us over things that the vast majority of people agree with. Think about this. This is one of those issues that helped Trump win, because in theory, when people hear that we've had millions and millions of people come here and we have no idea what they're up to, and we found out that large groups of them are committing fraud, and a lot of them are taking public handouts, most Americans think that is wrong. Come here legally, be a productive member of society. And I said this, I said it will be interesting if people would keep supporting Trump's policy on this when the stories start pouring out and the media begins to shape those stories about a nice Maryland father who's getting deported, even though he had a deportation order, had abused his wife, and he was a gang member. I knew that they would try to paint this rosy story for everyone that is getting deported, and they would seize on situations where any little mistakes are made, even though mistakes are always made. So as Christians, we have to support the officers that are enforcing the law. We have to encourage others to follow the law, even if they object to the process of deporting people. There are a bunch of ways to make your voice heard without getting in the way of an officer who is doing his or her job and following the law. If you feel strongly about it, work to change the laws. The left always acts like laws are optional. But as long as these are our laws, even nice people who are found to be here illegally risk being deported. That is our law. We should not want to become a nation where we have laws and they're just not followed. Imagine if a law was passed that says that every child gets free health care, and then someone comes into power and says, yeah, we're just not going to do that. It's the law, but we're not going to do that. He or she can work to pass new legislation to change it, but they can't just stop following a current law. And so these are the laws on the books. If we want to change the laws, then let's work to change the laws. I don't think that personally is a good idea. I think it's a great idea for a nation to know who's coming and going into their country and to insist that people who come here are ready to take responsibility for themselves. But now let me just dive into this for a second, because some people will say, but aren't there times where we should not obey the government as Christians because of something that God requires? Yes, that is true. If the government tells you you can't pray anymore in your own home or in your heart, you can't obey that. See Daniel. If the government tells you that you can't share your faith anymore, you can't obey that. See Peter and John in Acts chapter 4. If the government tells you that you have to abort your children, you can't obey that. See Moses' mom in Exodus. So in this case, if you had proof that these folks are just being rounded up and shot, for instance, sure, you should physically resist that. Like, you can't stand by and watch people just being murdered, right? So that would be a case where you would say, yeah, I need to get involved and I need to physically stand in the way. I've heard folks say that this, all of this that is going on, this is how the Holocaust started. And I think that's a huge overreach. I don't think the Holocaust started by people being legally deported. I don't think that's how it happened. So some have complained that due process is not being followed. In a July 3rd, 2025 article on the Heritage Foundation website, Hans von Spakovsky explains that due process is involved whenever a criminal case is being brought against anyone, including illegal immigrants. However, the process is much different for removing someone who is here legally. So listen to what he says. Immigration proceedings to bar aliens' entry to remove or deport an alien present inside the United States are not criminal proceedings. As the Supreme Court of the United States first outlined in 1983 in Fong Yu Ting versus U.S., a decision in which it rejected habeas corpus petitions filed by Chinese citizens who claimed that they were unlawfully detained by U.S. Marshals without due process of law. And so this is what that said. It said the immigration proceeding is in no proper sense a trial and sentence for a crime or offense. It is simply the ascertainment by appropriate and lawful means of the fact whether the conditions exist upon which Congress has enacted that an alien of this class may remain within the country. The order of deportation is not a punishment or a punishment for crime. It is but a method of enforcing the return to his own country of an alien who has not complied with the conditions upon the performance of which the government of the nation, acting within its constitutional authority and through proper departments, has determined that his continuing to reside here shall depend. The court added that the alien being removed by the government is not being deprived of life, liberty, or property, and that the provisions of the Constitution securing the right to trial by jury and prohibiting unreasonable searches and seizures and cruel and unusual punishments have no application. And so this is why federal immigration officers do not need a warrant issued by a judge before arresting and detaining aliens, and why aliens are not entitled to be advised of their Miranda rights or to the assistance of a government-appointed lawyer during deportation proceedings. This basically means that due process for deporting someone is to verify that you have no legal status and then deport them. That is the process. And so I think what a lot of leftists are saying is basically every single one of these people needs to go through a court proceeding. And what we're saying is this constitutionally, according to the Supreme Court all the way back in 1983, that's just not true. That's not true. I would love to know more about how we make sure that we don't make mistakes in this process of verifying that they don't have the proper status, but that should not stop us from enforcing the law. We should seek to find any which way that we might be making mistakes and root that out, but we still we can't say until we get it perfect, we can't move forward. As we look at this tragic situation, and it is extremely tragic, somebody died here. There are three parties that I really think should receive the blame. And a lot of people are kind of, trying to point fingers and that kind of thing. First of all, I think the Biden administration, they created this mess. And as I told someone, they knew when they let it get this bad that it would make whoever tried to fix it look like a jackbooted fascist. They let so much illegal immigration happen that they knew that if anybody actually tried to fix it, it was going to look really bad, because you're just rounding up people. And especially when you've got the advantage of the media, again, spinning it the way that they're spinning it now, that they didn't spin it under the Obama administration, that it was going to make them look really, really bad. And so I think that they figured it would never actually get addressed. But here's the trouble, is Trump doesn't really care what people call him. He's still just willing to address it. And so if you go back and look at old Bill and Hillary Clinton speeches, you look at Obama speeches, they would seem to agree with this approach exactly. I mean, literally the entire party has completely flipped from what they used to say about immigration. And you would be shocked. If you haven't looked at those, you'd be shocked to see how stiff Bill and Hillary Clinton and Obama were on this issue of, we have to make sure that if a person's not here legally, they're gone. And if they commit a crime while they're here, they're gone. And so it's so interesting how stiff they used to be on that subject. The second group I think gets some of the blame here is the media. And I've already kind of touched on this, but it could not be clearer that when you look at the difference between how they handled the deporter-in-chief and how they're handling this now, they are intentionally whipping up people's outrage and spinning this in a way to upset people. Do you think that things never got physical with Obama's ICE when they constantly were snatching up people? You don't think that ever happened? Do you think no mistakes were made when he was deporting people faster than any other president? If the media would report on these things fairly and evenly, there wouldn't be people trying to stop ICE agents. There wouldn't be these groups forming and going out. If I truly believed what these people are being fed, I guess I would be out there too. And so it's just they're just choosing intentionally to paint one picture with this president and a completely different picture when basically the exact same thing was going on. And it's causing people to get out there and put themselves in harm's way. And ultimately, you have to place the blame on Renee herself, unfortunately, for just not obeying the orders of the officer. It could have been sorted out in the legal system. If she had gotten out of her car, definitely with the Minnesota judicial system, she would have probably received no punishment. Of course, this is a federal thing, and so she might have gotten some punishment there, but she would still be alive. When people go out on these kinds of crusades, it can pump up your adrenaline. It can kind of feel really exciting. You realize you can taunt these officers and they can't really do anything about it. But if you block them, then don't follow orders and then accelerate into an officer, it becomes a really serious situation, and you've put yourself in that situation. And whatever the officer has to do to protect himself and to protect others, you're no longer in control of that, unfortunately. And so it's a really sad situation. I truly hate that it came to this. I don't personally see how this officer could have made a different split-second decision. Her decisions left him no choice. I'm sure he wishes it could have gone differently as well. I'm sure it was not his desire to have to protect his own life with deadly force that day. But let's, as Christians, let's be sure to pray, genuinely pray for her family. And let's pray for his family, because I'm sure right now he's getting a lot of threats. This is people want to make it look like it's some sort of fascist thing that these ICE officers cover their faces. They do that because the left has been so whipped up that they are doxing these people, they are threatening their families, and so we really need to pray for our officers, but we also need to pray for Renee Good's family, and just really pray that. That first they would be comforted. Second, that they would know Jesus completely, and just that there would be a change. And definitely pray for healing in our country, because as long as we keep allowing ourselves to be to have a wedge driven between us like this, people are going to be at each other's throats. These types of things are going to keep happening, and so there are no winners here. It's not a good situation, but again, no winners. But that is it for this week. We will see you next week. And remember, if you aren't seeing life God's way, you're not living in reality.